Hello, welcome to SED 386, Lesson 8. Today we're going to talk about CMs and ELOs. I know, it sounds like alphabet soup or BINGO. You know, because you've already read the chapters, that Chapter 5 in your Building Blocks book is about curriculum modifications, and Chapter 6 is embedded learning opportunities. So let's learn and think together, and also make some comparisons, because you're going to hear some information that compares to what you already read in your practices book. These authors all have some very similar approaches, and that is very helpful when we're thinking about how we're going to have best practices in our early childhood programs. So we're going to start out by talking about curriculum modifications, which is your Chapter 5. I love the picture that you're looking at right now, that we're looking at. I was visiting this classroom a few years ago, and this teacher was actually doing a little curriculum modification in this picture, and maybe you'll have a chance to think about what I'm talking about as we talk through our lesson. So it's been a few lessons since we've looked at the Building Blocks book, so I just want to remind you to review the children that are used in this text. You can look on page 6, or you can look in the pages that you did where you developed information about these kids. You did a table for each one of them, and become familiar with them again, because you're going to want to follow their story and their examples in this chapter. So what is a curriculum modification? A change to an ongoing classroom activity or materials in order to facilitate or maximize a child's participation in planned activities and routines. So let's look at the example on page 53. There's one for Drew. He was having a hard time in circle time, figuring out where to sit, how to settle in. And they sit on carpet squares already during the large group activity or circle time. So what Drew's teacher did was modify this by putting his name on his square, so he can be directed exactly to where he's to sit. And I believe she probably also chooses who he's going to sit by very purposefully. And Samisha, that example is good too. She has a hard time balancing. If you'll remember, Samisha has cerebral palsy, and her motor skills are impacted or impaired or delayed. And so to help Samisha with her balance, because when she's not in balance, she has a hard time focusing on the activities. Anyway, they just put a large block under her feet, and that way she is able to maintain her balance and able to be involved in the ongoing activities. So just a couple of very practical examples there for you. When we're thinking about developing curriculum modifications, we've got some steps here to follow, actually 4 steps. So make sure that you've got the structural supports in place. In other words, the environment, the schedule, the activities, the transitions. This is that bottom block of your building blocks that we have, that stack of building blocks. This is part of a high quality early childhood program, is going to have these pieces in place already for all children. And that is an important component. You will make yourself a little bit crazy if you skip this step and you're only doing the modification and adaptations, because there might be something simple that could be adjusted in these other environment, schedule, activities, and transitions. Step 2, develop a curriculum modification, and that's what Chapter 5 is about. It's the chapter we're on right now, and give it a try. Okay. Step 3, if that curriculum modification is not enough support for your particular student, more support's needed, you're going to try an embedded learning opportunity, and that's what we're going to talk about next in this same lesson, and that's Chapter 6 that you've read. If more support is needed, so the curriculum modification, the embedded learning opportunity still needs some more support for this particular student, child-focused instructional strategies. That's Chapter 7, and we'll be talking about that in another lesson coming up. Okay, so let's focus now on curriculum modifications. This textbook, this Building Blocks textbook, is awesome. It's one that I think you might want to keep, because they have covered so many supports for you. Let's start out by talking about curriculum modifications and adaptations. Before we do, we want to make sure that we have all the supports in place in case a child is having some difficulties, as we mentioned at the bottom of the last slide. So I want to point out, starting on page 55, there are a few pages of information when there are common classrooms challenges, what might be helpful. And table 5.2 on 58 and 59, very helpful. Look at, in the left-hand column, what the challenge might be, and then the authors have been so awesome. They've taken these 8 different types of modifications and adaptations: the environmental, materials, activity simplification, child preferences, special equipment, adult support, peer support, and invisible support. And they have told you what types of support might help a particular child that's having some difficulty. Then in your text, we move into these 8 types of curriculum. And pages 60 through 80 is listing examples, fabulous examples. And that's why I said this is an awesome reference book that you might want to keep. They have gone through each type of modification, and they have given examples of what might be challenging for the child, and then given you a suggestion of what you can do for a modification or adaptation. I want to move over now to our assignments for this lesson. You will see, and you might want to stop this lecture video and open the assignments right now, because you'll see the assignment number 1 is this slide. There is a Word document down towards the bottom there. It's called Lesson 8, L8, CM Examples. That is a blank form. Again, it's a Word document. And that blank form, which maybe you've got open, it might be helpful. You can look through this. It shows curriculum modification by type, and then the next column says example, and it's got the types listed there. What you're going to do is follow the link that is in with your assignment. It is actually a Screencast-O-Matic link. That is a video of many examples, pictures, and explanations of curriculum modifications. I want to make sure that you know to read the explanation there about turning off the sound after you get started on this video lecture for the curriculum modifications, because I had a technical problem and there's a lot of humming that you don't want to listen to. So you'll just be reading what's on the slide and looking at the pictures. There are 75 examples of curriculum modifications. As you're flipping through those, or as actually I'm flipping through them, you are going to want to capture 2. You're going to want to write down 2 examples, I don't care which ones, whatever ones you like, for each of the curriculum types, and fill that in your Word document that you have open. Okay? All right. So now let's move on to our next slide. The authors have now divided curriculum modifications into activity or routines, and you can see there at the top there are pages 84 through 134. There are descriptions of these on page 84 and 85, so that's where you want to refer to start. And these are all of the awesome ways that they have divided the activities or routines. Learning centers by topic of the learning center, planned activities that are normal in our early childhood programs, and then the routines that are pretty typical in our programs as well. Your activity that links with this section of the book, we do not have a video for this, but for slide 4, you're going to use that same Word document that you used just a moment ago, and you're going to choose one example from the textbook that you think would work for you in your future classroom or your current classroom, and fill that out. Save that document, and then when everything is done, you can submit that for this lesson, number 8. Okay. A little bit of information now about Chapter 6, which is Embedded Learning Opportunities. This means that as a teacher, you're going to create a very short plan for instruction. It's going to be embedded within ongoing classroom activities or routines or transitions, and you're going to focus on a child's individual learning objectives. So, for example, if you were helping a child learn the difference between big and little, You could plan this out, this embedded learning activity, join the child in the block area, tell them what we're going to do. We're going to pick 2 blocks, which one is big and which one is little, and have the child identify little or big. Okay. Looking at page 138, you've got embedded learning opportunity at a glance filled out for Drew. Look that over. Also, you're going to want to look at, there's another one. On page 142, there's an embedded learning opportunity filled out for Samisha. Your activity that goes along with Chapter 6, you've got another document to open attached here at the bottom of your assignments. And for that activity, you are going to be doing an ELO for any one of the 4 children in our textbook. Of course, you're not going to use the examples that are already filled out for you. So fill that out, save it, and submit it when you do your Lesson 8 activities. When we're talking about embedded learning opportunities, we have to think of the antecedent, the target behavior, the consequence. We talked about this a week or so ago with the practices book. What we're talking about here is, what are you going to do, what are you going to say, and how will you respond? Okay. So the antecedent is how you're going to set this up. The target behavior is what is it that you want the child to do. The consequence is how are you going to respond. And you're going to respond if they follow the directions or whatever the request is, or if they did not. You've got to have a plan for both. So use your book, use those examples. Things to remember about your embedded learning opportunities: minimal changes to the classroom or the activities, very minimal. You want to make sure the child's motivated to participate and that other children are involved as well. You want to make sure you can generalize this throughout the day, and that you give the child opportunity to use this behavior with a variety of adults and other kids in the setting. So thinking very purposefully about this. So our last topic is still the embedded learning opportunities, and what we're going to do is discuss the steps. So you're going to make sure you know what the learning objective is. What's the purpose? What's the function or objective? Why are we doing this? What do we need that child to do? You're going to identify and then create your embedded learning opportunity, and you've got examples there. You're going to design and implement the instructions. So that's part of the what are you going to do? What are you going to say? How will you respond? What materials do you need? And how often and when and where are you going to do this? Then monitor the child progress. So find some way to keep track of how they're doing, because remember, this is supposed to be short term. If you're not seeing changes in this child's skills or behavior or development in probably about a week's time using your approach maybe every day, then you might be thinking you need to go to the next level of support, which would be child-focused instructional. Again, you've got a child activity matrix on page 45, which is earlier in this book, which helps. I want to refer you back to that page 45, and I'm flipping to it now, because I want you to remember how we got to the decision about what it is the learning objective needs to be. What the learning objective needs to be. So you've got on that page an example for Tina, and then trying to hold my pages here. The next page is filled out for you as a classroom example, because you probably will have more than one child that you have an embedded learning opportunity for. So you want to map that out. So those are examples. Again, you've got examples of Samisha in this chapter, in chapter 6. And a reminder about embedded learning opportunity at a glance. Let's see, what page is that on? Well, you've got the 2 that I've already told you about. And so those are the things we want to focus on for this lesson. Let me know how things are going, and have a great day. Thanks.